Hey everyone, welcome back to PNgrowth's fourth Hangout. So today we have with us the core organizing team, members of the core organizing team of PNgrowth. Joining us is Pallav Nadhani from Fusion Charts, Rem Koning from Stanford, Sharad Sharma from iSpirit, and I'm Sharique Hasan from Stanford. So we're excited to have you, and our goal today is to give you a glimpse of the PNgrowth program, what you'll be taking away from it, and what you're going to be able to do with the tools that you take away. So I want to actually begin by just doing a little bit of a recap of how we're doing in terms of getting PNgrowth going. And there's a tremendous amount of excitement that's going on in the community, and we've seen this reflected in the number of applications we've been getting. We have several hundred applications already for PNgrowth, and the number just keeps on growing. And companies are really, really diverse. So we have healthcare companies, recruitment, ERP, just a wide range of B2B, B2C, tons of stuff going on. And we've also been kind of trying to really sharpen the program based on the needs that people have been showing. And so really I want to recap a couple of the things that motivate PNgrowth and why you should be part of this. Number one is, as we've been working on this, we've really tried to focus on designing the program for the Indian startup ecosystem from the ground up. We've been talking to a lot of entrepreneurs, we've been talking to applicants to really tailor the program and give people the tools they need to deal with the situation on the ground in India. We built it around a 3-day residential kickoff event in Mysore, and our focus is going to be on building category leaders. This is climbing the Mount Everest for whatever product category you are competing in. We pulled together some of the best mentors in the country, people who have tons of experience working with young startups who've built startups of their own that are now really, really important companies in the Indian ecosystem. And we wanted to have the program last well beyond these 3 days. So we've set up a program where after the 3-day kickoff event in Mysore, we're going to have months of follow-up through remote hangout and peer-based learning. We've already gotten the infrastructure for this set up, and we're really excited to deploy it. So if I were to summarize what motivates the design of PNgrowth, the architecture of how we've built this program, is really 3 things. And those 3 things are tools that are useful for any entrepreneur to think about strategy. And these are tools that are very concrete. These are questions you ask yourself as an entrepreneur, how you come up with solutions. And really the thing about the tools are based on a methodology that allows us to break up really big problems into small and manageable chunks, and then innovate and develop solutions for those problems in a way that's much less overwhelming and that allows you to deal with them in a way that doesn't feel like they're impossible to overcome. And that's really what a good framework and a set of tools allows you to do. The second thing is, we want you to leave with a strategic game plan. We want you to apply those tools at PNgrowth, practice them, work with mentors to actually have a roadmap that's yours, that's built for your company, not for some other random company, but for your company. And we want to use these roadmaps to guide you in the months that follow. And then finally, every good roadmap requires detailed and ongoing feedback from a community of mentors and peers who've been there, who are experiencing similar problems, who are living these issues day to day. And we want to have those 3 perspectives: your perspective, your peers' perspective, and the mentor's perspective, all reflected in a sharp plan. So those are the 3 things: tools and frameworks, a strategic game plan that's been reviewed and sharpened by peers and mentors. And so we want to give you a little bit of a taste of what that entails. So one question that often comes up for startups is, what are the emotions that your company elicits in others, whether it be investors or whether it be customers or whether it be in the employees that you want to have, the talent that you want to have be part of your company. And thinking about those emotions is a really tough task. And I'm going to hand it over to Pallav, who's really been thinking very hard about those emotions.
Right. So thanks, Sharique, for the detailed description. So if I put some thought to it, most of us start companies thinking about a pain point, and we start addressing that pain point, and we build a solution around that, and try and go to the first set of customers. And then one thing leads to another, and we get some customers, and suddenly we have a team. But in the thick of those things, we often do not get the chance to think about what does our company represent. So, for example, if you think of Apple, the emotion which comes to mind is elegance. If you think of, let's say, Uber, it could be convenience or it could be certainty. If you think of Disney, it's happiness. And the entire company, all the interaction points, everything is centered around that emotion. You can call it an adjective, you can call it an adverb. But that kind of defines what new products to build, what kind of culture to ascertain within the team. How do you even project yourself to customer, your marketing campaigns, every single thing. And as of now, you've seen a lot of entrepreneurs who've gone from the step 0 to 1, who have not thought about this in a conscious way. And what I want to do personally is bring this aspect of thinking of company as a persona, as a personality, and the emotion which is manifested by the company as one of the key and core tools, one of the many tools I would rather say, as part of the PNgrowth.
Great. So Sharad, in thinking about other tools that members of PNgrowth will walk away with, what aspect of the environment or the context in which a startup is operating are there? Do they face blind spots, and what are kind of some other tools that we might be missing that we will get from PNgrowth?
Yeah. So I think just to before we get there, the recap is that we are focusing on creating category winners. And just to use a metaphor here, we are looking for people who will now be able to climb Mount Everest and be able to get there. Now we know this is not going to happen by accident, right? This takes considerable effort to get there. And these tools are really the diagnostic tools which first let you assess, what is the state of readiness that you have in being able to get there. So one, of course, is what does the company represent, as Pallav talked about. And another tool that we'll be sharing with you will be really about you being able to assess from an industry perspective, right? How will this industry be changing? Because it's not static at all. And so the category that you are in, where will it be going in the years to come? And unless you have unless you formulate an opinion on that and you have a sense on how to look at that problem, there is no way you'll be able to build a game plan to become a category leader. So the second tool that we are talking about will help you examine this from an outside-in perspective rather than an inside-out perspective in terms of what's going to be happening in the industry.
Right.
So yeah, I think building on that, I think the big thing to take away is often when you learn these frameworks or tools, if you're reading them on a blog, or even if you go to a conference, right, it's easy to be like, oh, I'm really excited. That's something that I want to learn, and that's really cool. That's the way I should do sales, or that's the way I think about the strategy for hiring. And then you get back to the daily grind of the startup, and you forget, how to implement them, or to go back to what Paula was talking about with emotions, right? Which is, it's easy to think about these emotions, maybe spend some time doing it, but then how do you actually sort of incorporate that into a strategy and use that to shape your startup over the next 6 months to 12 months, the next year? And I think that's where, when Sharique was talking about the tools that you'll take away, the frameworks and the tools, that's something that I think you can get almost anywhere. I think the thing that's really exciting is the second two things which we offer, which is that we're going to help you convert those into a really clean roadmap, and then we're going to essentially help you drive. We're going to help you steer by connecting you with mentors in the 2 to 3 months after the program. And so those takeaways are something that I think makes the PNgrowth program, unlike sort of, I think, most other conferences and meetups that happen, which are really valuable. I think that information is there, but our hunch is, and Sharique actually was doing some data analysis earlier, of the applicants, what we see is that capital and hiring is definitely problems people face, but almost equally as likely the problems that people face are around finding mentorship, finding people who can help guide their startup and sort of navigating the strategy roadmap in some sense.
And,
right.
and our sense is that you'll end up using these tools again and again in your journey, right? I mean, for example, the second tool, which is the industry tool, which will help you answer a question. What will impede your ability to become a category leader? What may actually make you obsolete in that category? That's a question that you just don't need to ask and answer at PNgrowth, but may have to do it over the course of time, right? And so we want to equip you with these tools, diagnostic tools, that you will, of course, use once, but hopefully will end up using several times in your journey in the future.
So in the big picture, I think what PNgrowth is really built on is the idea that the best teacher anywhere is experience. The problem with experience is it's so idiosyncratic. You may or may not get the experience you need to make the right decisions, and it takes a lot of time. Now the problem is that we can't, tailor an experience for one person and expect that it's going to be fantastic and allow people to make all the right decisions. And so you want to bring that into the classroom. And so the best way to learn, at least what we found, both in terms of the research, is experiential learning. It's learning by doing. And that's the way we think about PNgrowth. PNgrowth is really learning by doing, and we'll guide you through tons and tons of practice. So practice, like you're going to become a great carpenter, right? You're not going to become a great carpenter just by reading blog posts or going and attending seminars where carpenters are talking. It's going to be building furniture, making mistakes, going through and having people tell you, look, this is not how you cut. This is not how you make this groove. It's basically by trying and getting that feedback that you'll actually turn into a great, plasterer or a great carpenter. And I think it's true of being a great founder as well, is that by practicing, by doing, you actually have these tools, and you leave with them. They're not in a book. They're actually inside of you, and then you can use this as a repertoire over and over again. And these tools are things like the questions we were just talking about, but it's also actually a discerning eye. So part of what makes someone a really good evaluator of strategy, of their own strategy, is the ability to dissect other people's strategies as well. So, for instance, what makes a doctor very good? It's not the theoretical knowledge that they learn in medical school. It's actually seeing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases over and over again. And you talk to heart surgeons, and they say, well, what's a great residency? A great residency is one where you actually have tremendous volume, right? You do heart surgeries over and over again, and lots of patients with lots and lots of different things. And that's the other thing we're going to be doing at PNgrowth. So on the second day, it's not just going to be focusing on your company and thinking very theoretically about what your competition is, what's going to make you obsolete, what the emotions are in your company, but actually looking at other companies, many of them, and seeing, look, this is the emotion they think they're priming. Actually, this is not it, because you get to see perspective of other companies that they actually don't get to see as well. And that hones your skill set, and a very critical one, which is the discerning eye. And that only comes through seeing lots and lots of cases. Rem, Pallav, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that was a great point, and I think that's one of the things that we're really excited about how the structure of the PNgrowth program works in the bootcamp, is that it's not just you reflecting on your own, but you're able to get feedback from other amazing entrepreneurs. And I think sort of tying it back to Pallav's point, one of the things we're going to be doing on the first day, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure about this, is sort of looking at sort of how other people sort of resonate with your startup and with your pitch, right? It's easy for you've drunk the Kool-Aid. You believe in your startup. You're spending, the 80, the 100 hours a week working on it, and it may be hard for you to see that while you think your startup is something that is making people's lives easier and that it's really exciting, other people may see it as having a different value add or resonating differently with a customer or a user. And so I think sort of by using the fact that we have this community that's part of PNgrowth at the bootcamp, you're going to be able to get lots of rapid feedback from people, and this is sort of underpins the design thinking approach, which is really how we've structured the 3 days. You may have encountered design thinking in the terms of sort of product development, but Sharique, Ronnie, and I have been sort of converting that into something that helps you sort of redefine your corporate strategy. And we think it's a really useful tool because you get rapid feedback, you get other people's impressions. It's easy to fool yourself. Talking to others, it's a little harder. And then we've sort of designed 3 days to allow you to then incorporate that information and take it back. which I think is going to be a really exciting sort of, I don't know, Pallav, if you have any experience sort of getting feedback from other founders, maybe in times where you thought you knew something but you didn't. He's on mute.
So if you look at it, most of the times as an entrepreneur, it's not that we are short of options. Most of the times, it's actually indigestion is what we're worried about. Hey, should we do A, B, C, D, or E? And if you had somebody to talk to and say, hey, when you did A, what happened? Or when you did B, what happened? Or should we do A, B, C, or B, A, C? And a part of this is actually even very, very specific to you. And somebody who's gone through that experience can tell you, if you do it, this will happen, but think of this as a sequence. So think of this game plan in this sequence. So especially, I mean, if I were to talk to the engineering folks, it's like your sprint planning. For your version release, you have a bunch of sprints. How do you plan your sprints? And within each sprint, which story points do you add so that you have a successful release at the end of the version? And even before that, if you want to have a release, if you have a few good sprints and which are consolidated sprints, you're still good to go. So how do you structure all of this, sequence all of this, and plan for this? A lot of that comes, a lot of that is hugely helped by other entrepreneurs as well. And that has been in my journey as well.
Yeah, we actually got a really great question. What if a founder discovers he's totally incapable of climbing Mount Everest, not mentally prepared? Will PNgrowth help? So we've actually built this into the program, and this is a, it's not. It sounds like a funny question, but actually it's a really, really fundamental question. As a founder, you're very different than a regular employee of a firm. Really, the firm is an embodiment of you, and your identity, your authenticity, who you are and how you resonate with both your product, your customers, with your employees, with your investors is very, very critical. And part of developing into an authentic founder is that process of self-reflection. And oftentimes we don't do that. And actually more so than that process of self-reflection and figuring out actually who you are and what it is that internally motivates you, I think part of it, the biggest challenge is communicating that to other people, because that's not so simple. There may be instances in your mind about, hey, this is who I am, this is what resonates with me, these are my values, these are the emotions that get me up in the morning to do what I want to do. But the challenge is it's very difficult to actually convey that to other people to get them excited about the problems that you're excited about. And we will focus a lot on that. So we've taken methodology that's a little bit different actually from the design thinking methodology that helps people reflect on who they are and can help them communicate that with better. So we'll actually be spending several hours on day 2 giving people the tools to both do that reflection about what it is that motivates you as a founder, but also give them the tools and the language to communicate that to others. I think that's extremely critical, and being a great founder really requires you to communicate that both in terms of the words you say, but also your actions, and not just in the short term, but also the long-term vision that you set for your company and your people. So I think that's extremely, extremely critical.
Yeah, I mean, I think just building on that, I think the other advantage of the bootcamp, sort of this question is, maybe you need to bring on another co-founder, or maybe you're the right person to be the CTO, but you need to bring on an external CEO, and this is the time to think about those problems, right? In the day-to-day hustle bustle of tactics, you never get a chance to sort of reflect back and work those problems out, right? Not everyone necessarily, has those skills. Maybe that's something you can develop, and we definitely want to help you develop. Maybe that's something where you need to bring on a partner who can help you do that. And I think it's easy to sort of take everything on yourself as a founder. This is something that Solem, who's on our team, she did an interview with over 50 founders in Bangalore, and one of the things she found is that people felt really, really lonely. There's a lot of depression, and one of the things that we want to tackle is not just your company, but because sort of in some sense the founder is the company, we want to make sure that the founder's sort of emotions and their sort of how they think about themselves relating to the company and other people is taken care of too. And so sort of this is actually a methodology that is used often at Stanford Graduate School of Business, which is, there's a lot of focus on how do you tell your story and how do you understand how you fit in emotionally as well, because that can make a really big difference in terms of both making you motivated and making sure that your company's successful. So we're going to have a whole module in the bootcamp designed around that.
Right. The other thing I think, Sharique, you were going to say something?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Afterwards.
So the other tool I think that often is not really very formalized, but a lot of founders use this in kind of deciding how they want to be, is role models and prototypes and archetypes. And one of the things that we often do is we think about who we want to be in reference to the archetypes that we actually go and see. Steve Jobs is a really classic example. Every young entrepreneur wants to be like Steve Jobs. And maybe that's healthy, maybe that's not healthy, whatever it is. The issue here is we want you to be able to think very clearly through how we want you to think very, very clearly through what are good archetypes. What are the archetypes that are going to be useful to you? Which ones can you actually model? Who can you be? And how do you think about these models and applying them to your company? And the best way to do that is to see both ends of that distribution. And so archetypes are very useful because they give you a sense of what's successful, but also the problem with the media and seeing these archetypes in big venues is you often learn only from the successes. And what we want to be able to do at PNgrowth is to have an opportunity to give people the chance to be very, very honest and to learn from things that don't work, from archetypes that don't work, from to build kind of an understanding of these models that are out there and how they can be applied.
So let me summarize all this in terms of what will happen on day 1, day 2, day 3, just so that in a kind of a package form. So day 1 is about rethink, right? And so how do you rethink? You'll use a bunch of diagnostic tools. We've talked about 2 examples. What does your company represent from an emotion perspective? What will make you obsolete? There'll be another tool that we haven't talked much about. What will the dominant company in that category look like? So there'll be tools like this that you will get on the first day, which you will use, but you'll also carry back with you at the end of 3 days, right? Now, what you do on the first day sets the stage for you on the second day to do the redesign. And you will come up with a custom, personalized game plan for category leadership that would have been vetted by your peers and by the mentors. So at the end of day 2, what you get is this game plan. That is a game plan that you carry back with you when you go back home, right? And that's the second day. Now, this game plan covers 4 areas. It will cover culture, it will cover teams, it will cover your product business design, it will also cover leadership, authentic leadership. So this game plan will be a rich game plan that you will take back, a personalized rich game plan that you'll take back with you. On the third day, you'll spend your time thinking about how to prioritize the implementation of the game plan, how to sequence it right, how to put measures or tracking and metrics in place so that you know that you're making progress. And you will go back with that implementation kind of a module with you, so that when you go back home, you can start with something right away, right? And put the game plan into motion. So this is the third thing that you carry back with you, and that comes from the third day. So this is what PNgrowth over those 3 days will be. Now, of course, as you start implementing it, post-implementation, you will run into difficulties. And as you run into difficulties, you will have an ability to call in for help from the mentors, from the peers, from the faculty of PNgrowth, so that when you run into a difficult place, you can seek help. And we will engage you again and again during the year, so that help seeking is a formal process. So that's really, in some sense, a brief description of what you take away with you at the end of 3 days.
So I would add one more thing. Thank you, Sharad, for that very succinct description of the 3 days. And on the third day, that prioritization is very, very critical. It's that all these things that you've kind of accumulated as tools and frameworks and metrics and all these things, well, you have to go back and figure out what do you start with. That's really, really critical. And we have a methodology for thinking about prioritization that we'll be teaching you. Just as importantly, though, is that you go back and as you know, PNgrowth only allows one founder to come. How do you then communicate this? And what we'll spend the end of the third day on is figuring out what is the best way for you to communicate that reprioritize strategic vision for your company. We have a great question. Thanks, Charlotte, for really summarizing that well. Is this really a 3-day workshop or a conference? Who will conduct these workshop sessions? How do we gain comfort about opening up in a group? Great questions. Rem, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So it's a 3-day workshop, is I think the way to think about it, versus a conference where you're going to be sitting back and sort of listening to speakers. It's definitely going to be intense. It's going to be collaborative. And so I think sort of the next question to answer is, how do you gain comfort about opening up in a group? And that's something we're going to spend a lot of time on. So we're vetting all the candidates to make sure they're sort of at the same stage, that they can relate to the problems you're working with. And we're not going to have you open up to all 200 people who are going to be at the event. I mean, that would be scary for anyone. The idea is we're going to be assigning you into small groups. I think of 4 people right now. We're still, depends on the numbers a little bit, but you'll be assigned to a group of 4 people, and then working in that group, right, you guys are going to discuss the problems you have, but you're not going to do it in a way where one person in that group can just dominate the conversation. It's going to be built around the software that we've developed that sort of structures the conversation. So everybody will get 10 minutes to sort of say, here are the problems I'm facing, and then we're going to have sort of structured responses where people can say, okay, here's how I felt, here's what I saw, maybe you missed a problem that you hadn't seen before. And that way we can sort of keep a conversation going between everybody who's in your group during the 3 days. And then sort of to complement the fact that you'll be working with these other founders, and this is where the mentors come in, they're going to be essentially sort of guiding the conversation. So we're going to have Pallav there, a number of other of great founders, CEOs, successful entrepreneurs who are going to be sort of guiding the conversation, saying, okay, what we're going to be talking about right now is sort of how to think about building an implementable strategy, or what we're going to think about right now is your emotional state as a founder, and they're going to be there to sort of rove between the groups and make sure that people are staying on point, that the conversations are happening. And so I think that structure sort of allows people to sort of, I don't know, peel away the layers that they've developed, and that's why we want it to be a residential retreat, right? We think unless you're really embedded in the workshop full-time, you're sort of putting all your focus into it, it's hard to open up. And so we really built the sessions to allow people to talk with one another, get to know one another, and we hope that you leave not only with formal mentors, but with friends, right? That there are people you can call when things are really hard, both to get advice about, okay, how do I expand to a new market, maybe enter the EU, for example, but also someone you could call when you've had a really crappy day and you had to fire a couple of people and you need just a little bit of moral support to back you up on that decision. And so that's the structure of the event. I would definitely agree. It's a workshop. You're going to have mentors who are going to help with the workshops and the sessions. And then in terms of comfort, we've built out the curriculum so that there's a lot of structure that allows you to feel comfortable sharing the problems and giving other people feedback as well.
Right. Yeah. I will also add the Sharique. So one of the things also, like some of the tools that we're going to be using, there's an inherent group benefit to a group setting, which enhances the value of that tool, because a lot of us entrepreneurs, we have our own mental constructs and simple answers to questions that we may be asking. But the validation of that through the group adds so much more value, where you're getting to really understand how different people in the ecosystem or how other entrepreneurs are thinking about the same problem and how they are reacting to it. So that's also a lot of value add through the group itself. So I think we'll have, again, as Rem said, the group size is going to be very small, but what we're also going to do is make it a very fun session in terms of helping the group steer through some very important, but some very fundamental questions at the same time.
Right. I think one point to note is that the way it's totally a workshop. It's definitely not a conference. So the way you want to think about it is these are conversations you often have in a very unstructured way with your friends. I'm positive of it. Solen, who is also working as from Stanford on PNgrowth, spent 3 weeks in Bangalore interviewing founders of young companies. And one of the things, as Rem mentioned, she found is that there are these issues that are both related to the startup but also to the founder that these young startups face. And people have built communities around the founders, and they ask themselves these questions, they talk to each other, and they try to find solutions internally. And we think actually that's a really, really great thing to do. The problem is that a lot of people don't have that community, is not as rich, and may not give them that kind of exposure they need. And what we want to do is kind of replicate that informality at PNgrowth, where people feel as if they can let their guard down so they can share. And comfort comes in a very natural way. Comfort comes when you feel other people are reciprocating and sharing, you'll do it as well. And I think that creates a very positive dynamic. And most importantly, experiences that you have is a public good. Because when you share, other people benefit, and they share and you benefit, and I think all boats rise in terms of that. And so we've really tried to design PNgrowth in a way that it's small, nurturing, but also gives you a chance to experience and hear perspectives that you don't usually get to hear when you're out in the real world. So we're trying to balance both that intimate comfort with the diversity of experiences. And I think PNgrowth kind of hits that sweet spot.
Maybe I can take this next question, Sharique, if you like.
For
the question is that PNgrowth implies that it's got something to do with growth hacking. And is that correct? What are the growth hacking techniques that would be covered at the conference? So first of all, this is not a conference. Let's get this out of the way, right? So there is no lean back, no choice of sessions. You have to be at work. You will be working harder in those 3 days than what you do in your normal day, right? So the second is, why is it called growth? Is it about growth hacking? No, it is not about growth hacking. It's about product nation growth. And this is founded on a very, very simple principle that you know that in iSpirit we've been working with lots of companies that find product market fit but are struggling to scale. And we solve that problem through playbook roundtables. Now here, even companies that are scaling are not able to reach category leadership. And they don't become category winners. Because winning a category is not an accident. It has to be part of your design. And this is really about solving for that. And so it is not about, what can you do after you go back and what kind of scale hacking, growth hacking techniques you can apply. This is not about that. This is really about, if you really want to learn that, come to playbook roundtables. This is really about trying to figure out what is it that you need to do to reignite the company, to rethink the company, to redesign the company, so that you have a shot at category leadership. It's founded on a very, very simple idea that actually, Pallav, you should describe the 1 to 10, 10 to 100, 0 to 1. Pallav, may I request you to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I think building up on what I said earlier, like a lot of us startup companies thinking of a pain point, and we go hack up some solution around it, try and find the first few customers and get validation for that. And this is what I call the 0 to 1 problem, because here you have just got your product market fit in terms of, hey, are people willing to pay for this? Now, once you've got that done, you want to build your sales function, you want to build your marketing function, you want to stretch the revenues up to as much as you can. Whether it's 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, that depends on your category. So you're building more and more sales, marketing, operational capabilities, so on and so forth, some sort of metric framework internally. And let's say now you've hit that. Let's say within that product category or within that product space, you have gotten a decent traction. Now you have multiple options. Either you can double down or treble down on that product and say, I'm going to be the de facto verb. My product is the de facto verb for this category, which is the 10 to 100. So 0 to 1 is product market fit. 1 to 10 is where you've gotten some scale and you've got some money in the bank and you've raised maybe a couple of rounds if at all you're a funded company. But 10 to 100 is where you really need to think through about either should I go and double down on this product, should I build more products which will solve more problems either for the existing customers or in the augmented space. And that requires a sort of rethinking of the organization. Some very fundamental aspects like, hey, should you be the CEO at all? Should you hire a CEO? How should you expand your teams? How should you expand globally? How should customers work with you? What should be your distribution channels after a certain point in time? And these are some of the questions which we typically do not even think about in 1 to 10. So, and once we start thinking about these questions, there's no right or wrong answer. It's very, very specific to the category you are in, the DNA of the founder, the DNA of the team. And one of our attempts here is to be able to really work with you guys and figure out what is it that will really help you get through that phase, or at least help you think through that.
Thanks, Pallav. So we got another great question. What do you mean by infrastructure for post-kickoff event touchpoints? So the question is, okay, you get all these things from the 3 days of PNgrowth. What do you do afterwards? What are the things that you have on an ongoing basis after the 3-day kickoff event ends? So here we have a lot of stuff lined up. So these are really important. Basically, it's a community and a set of tools that we've developed to keep the conversation going, to keep problems being resolved in the future. And we plan on actually discussing these in much more detail in a follow-up Hangout. But the key thing is that there will be an infrastructure for you to deal with all the problems that you experience on a day-to-day basis after that 3-day event is over.
Sort of think of it as a smart Rolodex, if anybody's still familiar with what a Rolodex is. But the idea is that the other people in PNgrowth are going to be contacts, and what we're going to make sure is that you have Hangouts with them. We're going to have diagnostics to follow up. We're going to make sure that we have meetings in person as well. We'll describe these more in the next Hangout in details. But essentially, it's sort of a lot of what we're thinking about, and we're still designing this now, and this is something we're going to be working on over the next year, is how do you take something like the 3-day boot camp that we're building to sort of kick off PNgrowth, and how do you sort of unbundle it into something that can become part of sort of the weekly routine of a founder, right? That this is something that you're going to go check in on, ask some questions. Once a month, you're going to be filling out a survey to see how your progress stacks up and if you're meeting the goals that you need to meet. The next month, maybe you're going to a hangout in Bangalore and Delhi where you're meeting up with some of the other PNgrowth members. And so details on this are still emerging. We're actively working on it. But I think that's going to be one of the more exciting things that I think, if we're not a conference, if you're going to work harder in those 3 days than you've ever worked when you come to the boot camp, unlike a conference, we're also going to have a lot of follow-up afterwards as well. We don't want you just to come, have fun, eat some good food, and leave. We want to make sure that we're continuing that conversation for the next year.
Also see the motivation of the people who are behind this, and we are doing this because we really, really want more category winners out of India, and so we're not going to let go till a lot of you become category winners, and that's why we're doing it. I mean, this is why it's really free for you, right? I mean, all this effort that's going in is because it's driven by this larger kind of goal, a cause, which is to get more category winners out of India. And so we're not going to let you go away easily. A lot of follow-up even after the 3 days are over, and we'll cover this in detail, in a future Hangout.
To add to what you said, Sharath, I think I'll repeat what I said in my last Hangout. I think as young Indians, we owe to our nation. It's a moral imperative. The last 2 biggest exports that we have had from India was Bollywood and yoga. Software services, maybe yes, maybe no, but again, when we go out, nobody's going to be proud and say, hey, you buggers from India, please come and shake my hand, you delivered that awesome thing. And I think software product is that specific area where we have a huge opportunity to make this impact, and across horizontals, across verticals, and with technology being so commoditized, we have this great opportunity that we should not lose, and we should absolutely capitalize on. So, like to say it, like, let's build the Marwari or Gujarati model of bringing everybody together in the community to make it a success. And a software product ecosystem in India, this is our effort to get it together and really make this happen.
Awesome, Pallav. Thank you so much. That was great. So we're excited to be with you on your journey to rethink, redesign, and reignite. And we hope we can, be there as you climb your Mount Everest. So with that, we'll sign off. Thank you very much for joining in.
Thank you all.